In the spotlight tonight, the trigger. Remember the trigger? It's attached to the gun that Congress has aimed at its own head. But Congress, being Congress, they may have forgotten to actually load that gun. In the tortured debt ceiling deal passed in August, Congress created a super committee that is empowered to write legislation that has a guaranteed route to a vote. In other words, it just cannot be filibustered, can't be stopped. And the super committee's legislation must cut the deficit by $1.2 trillion using any mix of tax revenue increases or spending cuts that the majority of the super committee can agree to. If the super committee fails to produce such a bill, or if Congress fails to pass it, that will automatically trigger $1.2 trillion in budget cuts that neither party will like, including massive cuts in defense spending that Republicans will hate and massive across-the-board discretionary spending cuts that Democrats will hate. Those dreaded triggered cuts, the ones that each party will hate, are supposed to provide the incentive for the super committee to come up with something smarter, something more acceptable to both parties. But what if the automatically triggered cuts are not so automatic after all? Joining me now is Ryan Grim, Washington bureau chief for Huffington Post, who wrote about this today. Ryan, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Ryan, the title of your piece today, Super Committee's Cuts Anything But Automatic. What did we miss here? What did they sneak by us? How are they going to get around the automatic trigger that they're all so afraid of?
Yeah, if you listen to the coverage of this, and especially if you listen to the members of the super committee themselves, you would think, that the moment that they deadlocked almost, that the federal government would cease to operate as we know it, and these painful across-the-board cuts would happen immediately. Or they might even happen in the next month or so. No. What Congress did when they wrote the law is they said these cuts will begin to take effect January 1st, 2013, and then they will go out through the next 10 years. So they could even all be backloaded towards like 2020, 2021, and they would still be in compliance with the law. But 2013 is what's key, because as your show talks about every night, there's something pretty important that's going to happen between now and January 1st, 2013. A few important things.
Yeah, let me think. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there's going to be a presidential election and a congressional election. Yeah.
And then what you have after a presidential election and a congressional election is you have a lame duck Congress. And this is something that I didn't mention in my piece, but the debt ceiling is going to be touched right around that time as well. January 1st, 2013, Bush's tax cuts expire. So you're going to have this need to do all sorts of structural policy work in this very short amount of time. And so everything's just going to come together. And I talked to a bunch of senators and laid this scenario out to them, and overwhelmingly they said, yes, that's right. That's when it's going to come together. So what we're going to have, we're going to have deadlock now, and that's probably a good thing for all sides. The Republicans don't want taxes, so they won't get tax increases. Democrats don't want cuts, they won't get cuts. God knows the Pentagon doesn't want to get cut, so they won't get touched. And then you'll have the next year plus to start talking about how you're going to do all of this together: the debt ceiling, the Bush tax cuts that Obama extended, and also these supposed automatic cuts. So all of that's going to get put together, and it'll get worked out probably sometime in the lame duck.
Well, Ryan, isn't it even specifically designed to be done in the lame duck session? The super committee isn't even expected to report until after the election, aren't they?
Well, the super committee is supposed to report, I believe, this November. So it should it should have collapsed pretty quickly, but they did give themselves through 2012 to work on the super committee's recommendations. So you're right. So they can be working on these recommendations. And the other thing is that if the super committee cuts, say, $200 billion, they find $200 billion over 10 years. Which is not that difficult to do. You can monkey around with all kinds of baselines and different rates to come up with $200 billion easily. So that would mean that then these automatic cuts supposedly would only be there to make up the difference. All of that difference could be made by simply allowing the Bush tax cuts to expire, because that in itself would raise the amount of revenue that the Supreme Committee, I was going to call them Super Committee, Congress, whatever you want to call them, what they were supposed to cut. So basically we've got a lot of theater right now.
Yeah, on January 1, at that point, the Bush rates expire, and you would raise $4 trillion over 10 years without anybody legislating anything. We're going to do a lot more on this. Ryan Grim of the Huffington Post, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.